What I was promising, if you want to try a little weekend neural hang gliding, still talking about some of the stuff we was talking about, but on a little... Don't get confused by an overview of looking down if you were hang gliding off of a neural cliff somewhere. And at first you might see big patches and you think, oh, that looks familiar. All right, here it goes. Are you ready? First, I guess a chi-root, a statement, a theorem. A sentence. That's it. That's what I was looking for. First, a comment. It goes like this. Only those creatures privy to facts ever feel as though they are malfunctioning. I'll give you a second variation. It is only beings who have moved from the world of acts into the world of facts who have any sensation that the facts may be telling them that you're malfunctioning. First off, note, it's not, none of this is, of course, from a pessimistic view. It's more from an independent survey. But you could declare, if you want to see it this way, besides what people have done psychologically and zoologically and biologically, you could look at the dynamics of this, a feeling as though you may be malfunctioning, as being the singularity, separating man and all the other three-dimensional creatures. Think about it. Now, I know that we have almost talked about or mentioned some of this, but we're going further. Don't forget the first part, because that is almost a good wrap, is it's only those beings privy to facts who ever feel as though they might be malfunctioning. That kind of singular position of being the only three-dimensional creature that has any sensation that they could be dysfunctional. You could forget all the other, or go beyond all the other attempted marks of distinction that they have tried to make sociological, psychological, and etc., such as man's opposable thumb, man living in civilized groups, man apparently being capable of some selfless acts, charity, man being a tool-using creature. Now, all of those things have been used, and there's probably more by now. But very often, for a long time into this century, they were using this. Of course, then they come to find some chimps that were doing some manual dexterity, and they've even now found some chimps and some birds that seem to be using tools. They got birds that go out and pick up pieces of straw and punch into holes to get some kind of bugs to run out. But beyond all that, of course, you would always be safe to saying it's only man who can, I started to say speak, but you've even got psychologists now, they still running around, some of them believing that they've got chimps actually engaged in some kind of malleable language. But they would at least probably still agree to this, for the sake of that, so that we'll try and round up as many city views as possible, that even if there was some question as man being the only creature with an opposable, usable thumb, or the only creature that uses tools, they would get down to say, all right, he's the only one that's got anything resembling a mind, an intellect. They would all agree to that. That could be looked at as being the distinguishing feature. And if anybody was in the city was listening to all of us do all this time after time, they could say, well, at least we agree on that. That is the singularity vis-a-vis man and all the other creatures. But they would have left out. So let's assume that the thumb and all the rest of that is not absolutely, well, it's not unique under number one in the dictionary. That is actually singular, not just unusual. But if we assumed, just for a second, that some of these other erstwhile marks of man's uniqueness, his thumb and his tool making and etc., if they're open to some question, let's just assume that the mind, the intellect, as everyone knows it, is still the unique factor. But if we assume that, we got all of life, we got all of men if we could trick life and it would let all of man go, all right, we agree to that. They have left out, though, a very, very important part, operationally. And then if I might speak for them, if I were doing all this, and I said, well, you left out something, what would they say? They would say, well, you mean whether an individual here and there has actually made proper use, full use of his intellect, whether he really went to school and studied and applied himself. No, no, no. That there is a uniqueness, without any doubt, let's say if they agree, to the mind. But then there's something else that you have got to point out about it. Well, it has increased man's ability to do work. That instead of man having to depend upon him having agile digits and an opposable thumb, he now can construct machines to do such work that he doesn't have to use his thumb unless it's to mash a button. No, that's not it. The part that cannot be left out is that the intellect, now, for the sake of saying this, which is still safe to do, that it is the true, unassailable, unique factor in man. It's as though you have an aeroplane that will take man high above the other creatures, the other inhabitants of this planet, and yet there's something about the atmosphere inside this flying machine that has morbific side effects. It's almost as though man's mind is like the Trojan story redux, that the mind is like a horse, a Trojan horse, that the horse tells man, don't look at my mouth. Or a gift horse. If you look at it from a much more independent view of not being either right or wrong, and assuming that you have broad enough view, or if you're trying to really take that kind of broad view today, it's not that there's an individual somewhere whose mind is dysfunctional. Just notice, there is no human passing for sane on this planet. It's not that the feeling that one's facts are in some way telling one that one is dysfunctional. It is not that that would single one out as being dysfunctional. Contraire. Those who believe that their mind is absolutely perfect are the ones who are put away. Do note that. So it's not that I am in some way pointing out that, well, yes, we have many people. 1/2 of the hospital beds in the United States are taken up by people. No. Mental illness, that was it, yes. By those with mental problems. That's not it. Everyone who is sane, poster people, boys and girls, for sanity, all over this planet, are those that would say, no, man is not a completion. Man is an ongoing struggle to be completed. None of us are perfect, save an attorney here and there. None of us are perfect. That is one sure sign. And this is not attributable to the insight and wisdom of the psychiatric profession. This is life at work, the electrical energy in life, that those who feel to varying degrees that I am indeed malfunctioning. Of course, religious people believe I am a sinner. Some way I'm falling down in my religious duties, or in some way my sense of morality has serious cracks around the foundation. Or if indeed I'm an atheist, I do not attend the atheist meetings as regular as I should. And my dues are behind, and I have not denounced religion. God, it's been so long. Everyone has got, and plus I'm overweight. And nobody likes a humanist who's overweight. We all know that. So everybody, the epitome, literally, of sanity. The Pope, everybody, the presidents, everyone says that's one of the signs, not just of that kind of socially graceful sham humility, but it is, without them analyzing in this way, it is a proof of sanity for someone to say, well, now I could be wrong. Or someone to say, now I'm not perfect. I know I'm about to point out some of the faults of this group over here, or we're about to attack our neighbors over here, but I want to say it's not on the basis that we're absolutely correct in everything, or I'm about to make a personal critique of someone else's work or someone else's ideas, but I must tell you now, I'm not perfect by any means. That is not just socially acceptable humility being played out. It is, as I said, it's never, to my knowledge, well, I know for a fact it's not any kind of widespread electrical information in life. Somebody here and there may have said it, but it is an unrecognized identification card. It's like you holding out an emblem showing I am sane. What I may say now may be a little unusual. I may have a new idea here in my field that I'm about to expound, but at least I want to show you I'm sane. And you do that by saying, well, tonight I'm going to read a paper here to the Architectural Annual Banquet and Fist Fight. And I want to say beforehand some of my ideas from this paper. Some, I must admit, some of you are going to find you're going to take great exception to. Now, I know that beforehand. We're all friends. Many of you, I know some of my close associates. You're probably going to say, Hubert, that's my name, that Hubert, you're wrong. And so I want to tell you right now, these are simply my ideas. I'm not God. I can't prove that buildings should look like this. I feel as though I have my pulse upon the ever-changing mainstream of artistic taste in our part of the world. But I'm not God. So what I want to do is kind of open it up to try and spur on some new thinking so that we do not freeze in this post-modern era of architecture. Now, it's looked at as being a kind of, if we were doing a psychological analysis of this, of a kind of a preface to protect one, putting out a buffer like, well, now I know some of you are going to disagree, which that's always good to come out and say, well, yes, I am the singer for the night. I just got in from Vegas. I guess a lot of you know Vegas throat, and me, I had to fly in on the... Yes, I am going to play the piano tonight. I would like to point out while I was jogging this afternoon, I tripped and fell on my hand. I'm going to do the best I can. Now, everybody understands that. But it's also something else when it gets into more the area of facts as opposed to the actual physical of, well, my hands hurt. I was going to dance for you, but God, I pulled my knee. I'll do the best I can. When it gets into the intellectual area, part of admitting, now I could be wrong. I mean, after all, I'm just a meteorologist, or I'm just a financial advisor. You know, so I can't guarantee results. That's why we call it a profession. Those of you that never read up on the law, there's a difference between a business and a profession. In a business, you can be held strictly accountable. You know, if a mechanic says he fixed your radiator and he didn't, but an attorney or a doctor or a priest or a psychiatrist, all they have to do, a profession is known as they exercise a standard of service and care that is parallel, adequate to prevailing standards. What it means is we did the best I could. That's what a profession is. Professions do not guarantee results. That's a fact. That is part of the Anglo-Saxon common law if it's not codified in your state. Is a profession cannot guarantee results. It offers services at a professional level. Do not attempt to apply this to your own brain, because I know of no civilized states that license brains. There is no one to give you the stamp of approval and say, yes, your brain operates adequately enough to do the best it can. But even if they did, notice, if they treated on the level of a profession, that in your state, that they treated your brain activity as a profession, such as psychiatry, as opposed to a business such as most states license hairdressers. God knows why. Don't write me. But you got to pass a test to be a hairdresser. But a hairdresser, you guarantee. Or some states, I think, are now actually licensing mechanics. But what if they did treat it, the thinking process, and the state sit down, what will we do? Is this going to be simply a business license that we give somebody, or some sort of business test like for barbers? Or should thinking activity actually be a profession? I suggest to you that they would not have to go off on some kind of weekend retreat and everybody think, which should it be? Because a profession, once they understood, if there were non-attorneys there in the committee considering the question, that one of the hallmarks, the distinguishing features of a profession is it does not guarantee results. It only guarantees adequate care. Guarantees the best it can do, but it cannot guarantee results. Who on that committee, assuming they're sane, who would think, well, is there any choice? What choice do we have? Thinking has got to be, you fill in the blank. Back to where we were. It would only be man's intellect It would only be this side that has any question as to whether it's fulfilling its functions. And I was going to drag it down to a quite surely easy level to see that if you're looking at it from a more complex position, then you see that this unique ability, thinking, not only produces what seems to be man's unique position on this planet, his singular, shall we say, sense of power and authority over the planet. It not only produces that, but it's also this facility, from this facility that comes his illnesses of facts. If you'd like to put that in quotation marks so I can point out as opposed to, well, I'll tell you right quick, as opposed to what just referred to ordinarily as actual illness. Is illness of facts, or to really keep the verbal balance, as opposed to illnesses by acts. Broken bones, viruses, cancers, things that would just seem to happen. We're not going into any question that somebody over here has cancer and it's obvious that they had a subconscious desire for a long time to be very sick. And if we had time, we could go into it. Forget that. A guy just shows up, he's got a broken leg from skiing. And don't tell me, well, he wanted to. He tried to pick up a girl on the slope, and she, put him down and said, get out of here. And so he tripped, fell over, and broke his leg, looking for sympathy. That's all right. But let's assume he's now got a broken leg. That is an illness by act. But now notice, I did not make up that figure. I picked it out. I've heard it over the last decade, recently, that it's more than half. As a matter of fact, now the last figure I heard is more than half of the hospital beds in America are taken up by those whose problems are not physical. Think about that. Okay. I'm duly impressed. So you're dealing not with people laying in hospital beds with broken legs. The majority of the hospital beds are people who are suffering from illness by facts. Now, I'm not taking up the banner of psychology. I just want you to see the kind of division that we have been using for an operational purpose for the last few nights of the worlds of acts and facts. It's very common for modern man, half the hospital beds, over half, for them to be ill in the area of facts as opposed to acts. But notice, they would not have hospital beds and medicine and psychiatry to treat this illness. Were it not for the same source, it would seem to be the same source that's creating the ill. Do you follow? And you do not have a collateral area in illness, maladies by acts. You cannot take a broken leg and find any parallel. If you're following what I'm saying, you'd have to then say, well, wait a minute. Man, well, hell, you could do it now that I said, if you're dumb enough. You could say, man can only walk thanks to legs. Where would man be without legs? He couldn't bowl, he couldn't ski, he couldn't do the boogaloo. And then you could say, but then after he thought he had a friend in his legs. Sometimes the bastards turn on him and they will give like that and break. Put him out of work, put him out of commission, make him right. You understand? I had to go ahead and do that in case any ordinary person was listening. I went, wait a minute. So now, wait a minute yourself. There is nothing comparable. You leave the world of acts, that kind of even reflective of a primary world, back to the kind of silent, big 3 S's of sex and sustenance, shelter, staying alive. Arbitrarily, artificially, just for the sake of this verbal flight of fancy, picturing man somehow sort of being like he is, but being cut right through here, and to talk about him for a while that there he is, and he really has no intellect going anymore. That would be a primary existence. The only thing he would be capable of, to still use our arbitrary map of acts and facts, he has no world of facts. All he has is a world of acts. So then he moves up higher into the world of acts so that he can produce such things as antibodies, hospital beds, dual bookkeeping. Figured out how to charge $7 for an aspirin. Anyway, he figures out how to build hospitals, how to put people in an unconscious state so he can cut them open and do things to them that if they were awake, people tend to go, ugh, get upset. The mind does all this, and then this great hospital. Let's look at the hospital, because nowadays it is next to the space program. I guess you could look at medicine nowadays as being right at the cutting edge, that and physics, of the technology, the power of the human mind. And then look at the hospitals, according to their own figures. Half of them are full now of what? People who are they're sick, according to them, from the same source that built the hospital. Hell. The question then should be to a real perverted, subversive mind, as always is, well, the several versions we've done, such as, what gives? What the hell is this? Or the more genteel version of, to what possible ends might life be so arranged? Which is the same thing as, what the hell? Why would anybody, obviously as sharp as life, anybody as sharp, as hard-nosed, as efficient as life, arrange something in this manner? All right, I'll answer. Because it is sharp, hard-nosed, no nonsense, and efficient. It is. Perceived, heard, at the three-dimensional level, if somebody did, and I guess what I said, I could get an ordinary intelligent person to hear that. What I just went through about, right quick, I'll back up, that I told somebody, isn't it weird, if we look at man as the only creature, that all we know, let's just say that man and everything we see on this planet is all there is. And this guy goes, okay. It's man's mind that distinguishes him. The guy's like, yeah, all right. And I was thinking about one area where technology has really taken off. I know it in other areas, but the way that's really taken off that has some pertinence to you and me, or could be, is in the field of health. Medicine, yeah. Maybe we're driving by or sitting in a bar across the street from a big hospital, over at the doctor's bar. And go, look over there. You've heard about cat machines and dog machines and all kinds of, they got equipment over there that, they charge you $1,000 just to show it to you. Forget that you got to use some of it. Yeah, I've read about that too. Think about it, it's the human intellect. They're over there now, they're curing diseases. They're treating them successfully that killed our father's generation, which is a fact. And you go, yeah, I know it. Boy, isn't that something? Yeah, it is. And then say, well, do you realize that the Hospital Association of America's figure is that it's well over 50% of the beds of the people in that hospital, this one and everyone in the country, are there because of mental problems. The guy go, yeah, I've heard that figure. And if I said, have another drink, and I said, think about that. We wouldn't have the hospitals and all this marvelous technology that is extending life and curing ills that actually killed my father, maybe your mother. They actually killed them. They're now treating it, yeah? But most of the beds over there, the majority of the patients over there are not over there because of diabetes or leukemia. They're over there because of problems with this thing, this one thing that built that. Now, I could get an ordinary person. Of course, they'd be lapsing very quickly. It's a short step from bourbon to irony anyway. From all alcohol to irony. And, of course, for those of you that are really keeping score, it is a short step from being alive to feeling ironic. But at any rate, you hear me, that an ordinary person could go, yeah, God, that is weird. But what would they do with it? Three-dimensionally, it's almost, is why I keep bringing up irony, because it is a reasonable description of human intellect. That it runs in a circle. At city level, people who normally pass, I've pulled you out examples before, you should see it, that in a certain way, people, ideas, attitudes that pass for being unusually intelligent and perceptive, all it is people who are seeing irony. Satirists, forever, historically, are looked upon as being, Don't let Voltaire, don't let Dr. Johnson, what he wrote, or Swift, some of that crude stuff, don't be misled. That man saw what the hell was going on. I wouldn't be surprised, and many of these satirists throughout history, if you're also not aware, for a sidebar, many of them now are suspected of being part of some kind of real intellectual or spiritual conspiracy, of being involved with some great metaphysical work that they were kind of keep it hidden. And all it takes is being able, especially to be literate and verbal enough, just to be a smartass. But at a higher level. Well, at a higher level than a guy down in the, not at the doctor's bar, but at the orderly's bar down the street. And they're down there, and the height of their humor and sarcasm is, one guy punches another guy, and he says, "Hey, watch it, mother." And he said, "You talking to me?" And he said, "Why do you think I'm talking to the bar stool?" I mean, that's the extent of that. But then you move on past up to the doctor's hospital, or maybe a little further over toward the university's bar. And that's when you get the humor, the sarcasm. They call it satire. They call it objective thinking. It's still you attempting to strip the skin off somebody else's brain and so-called talent. But satire, humorous insight, is seen, and especially the further you get away, Gulliver's Travels and Praise of Folly, Erasmus and all these people, not that it might not be entertaining to read, but all it is a literate form of irony. And all of you proved it to my satisfaction. I gave up. Irony, you're talking about oxygen. You're talking about the blood running. Because everything in a three-dimensional world, everything that is on a polarized basis will return somewhere close to where it was, and therefore anything that apparently says, all right, we're all going over here, individually or institutionally, we're going over here. And they never do, if it succeeds. Now, we've been through that. The purpose of psychiatry is not to cure people. The purpose of religion is not to save people, or whatever they call it. None of the purposes are what they say they are. If they were, they would be self-defeating. And those that do accomplish what they do disappear. That's why you never hear of them. That's why success seems to be, well, why is it all bad news? Because anything that the ordinary mind, the polarized mind, would think is good news disappears. It succeeded. So, at that level, everything, no matter what it is, in a sense is ironic. If it still lives, if it is breathing, if it is viable, if life is using it, it is producing, from somebody's view, somewhere. It's like a merry-go-round going around according to where you're looking. You might keep your eye on a purple horse, and you think, what we need in life is for the purple horses to get ahead of the green ones, because then my stock will go up, or my sex life will be better. I'm having to speak metaphorically right quick. And so it's according to where you're standing, but eventually that purple horse is going to come back around. It's going to be in the same position where it was. That is, you're going to find all of your efforts, all the money you bet, all the investments you made, everything you've done to some degree has come to naught. And even worse, it seems to have turned on itself. That is, I tried to be a decent person in life, and what happened? I get treated indecently. I try to be honest, and what happened? I am surrounded by damn thieves. The better I try to be, the worse I'm treated. Hey, wake up and smell the life. So, I could get an ordinary person to say that, and they couldn't go any further, though, because they cannot take irony and stretch it out any further. You cannot take three dimensions, using a three-dimensional mind, and stretch it any further. That is part of, for those of you that really want to notice, is part of, at the ordinary level, what laughter is it pulls polarized reality to the point that it's made it ironic. In a broad sense, that is the basis of every joke in the city. That it is ironic. It's why the punchline makes you laugh. And why you laugh is, it should come further and make you go, ah, and the brain can't do it, and it laughs. So they couldn't do anything with it. And I went through all that to try and encourage you to, by God, do something with it. Because it is an astoundingly efficient, cold-blooded, hard-nosed, right on the money arrangement to have the thing that is a creature's singularity to be the very thing that also makes it, leads it to believe, makes it feel, take it I'll give you a wide range, that it may be malfunctioning by operating. Except it can never turn back and look at that and go, wait a minute. The very thing that's telling me that, were it not for that thing, I couldn't think that. I could not be sick, I could not be ill, I could not be malfunctioning via facts unless I had the ability to have facts. In other words, what makes me singular as a person, as a human, part of the human race, what makes me singular is my ability to think. And what is a large part of everyone's thinking is they're thinking I'm malfunctioning. Whereas if you could not think you're malfunctioning. Now, if we had some of those smart asses at the bars, they might go, wait a minute. No. See, I did it first. I did it for them. You cannot in any comparable way malfunction regarding acts. There is no such thing. Well, you might say there's such things, but the people are known. Life recognizes them as being, I can say anomalous to be nice about it, but they're cancers. They're gone. They're normally nowadays called insane, self-destructive. They are not serving the general purposes of life. Well, look at it this way. If it were in the world of, we're still talking about facts and acts. If facts were as clear cut, if they operated facts, the world of facts, the world in here of man, if they were as clearly limed and defined as being either on or off, do or die, in the same way that acts are, if facts were that way, then that would result, if this could happen, would result in two easy ways to look at it, and two drastic alterations in the life of life, right where man lives in life. One is, if facts operate on that basis, they would not be offering the disturbance they now do. Looked at another way. We're talking about the same thing, but if that didn't hit you, is why I'll give you the other side. If there were something comparable in the world of facts that there are to acts, that is, that they operate quite clearly off on profit, cost, if they could give what would appear to be conclusive satisfaction, which acts do. We're back now, of course, using it in the arbitrary, even in our verbiage, do or die, having to draw this line verbally. If facts could give that same sensation, quite clear sensation, of apparently reaching some individual at the time conclusive area of satisfaction, like acts such as sex, eating, sleeping. Now, an ordinary person cannot do those things dysfunctionally. Now, I know that there are people in life that they say they do. And I'm not questioning that, but do note that is not what drives life. They put those people away. They are, in a sense, a malfunction of life itself. We're talking about just the ordinary people, that which drives, fuels, transforms the electrical energy of life in man. Ordinary people, well, assume I'm talking to you. Now, we discounted the rest of that. You cannot do sex wrong. You do not do sex and then think, well, wait a minute, I didn't do it right. Now forget, we're saying if we're trying to talk right now just about the acts, like the primary world. You do not eat when you're hungry. You do not eat and in some way do it wrong. Or if you're tired, you're really tired, you've been out hunting, working for your family and for yourself. The sun's going down, you've been running all day, hunting for those good old berries and shoots. And you're just tired, and you lay down, and you're about to go to sleep. There's no way you can go to sleep wrong. There's no way that you can dysfunctionally sleep. Now, what if that were true, though, in the world of facts? What would that do to the present arrangement of things? You follow me? That if, I know I turned that inside out 1.5 times, that the world of acts, taking them as for a second, an isolated phenomenon by themselves, acts in no way can give a sensation that you are malfunctioning. You cannot engage in sex, you cannot eat, you cannot sleep, you cannot run in out of the freezing rain in some way that will be a malfunction. I mean, what else can you say? But all you can do is make a good old double hand gesture. What can you do? There's no way to do it wrong. You cannot malfunction an act. It's not possible. If it is, it's suicidal. And we're talking about that which is not part of ordinary life. What if the world of facts had a similar arrangement? That it was impossible in any way to deal in thinking that offered anything less than, at the time, to you personally, the same kind of, I say apparent with no great reservations or no quotation marks, but it gave you the sensation of some conclusiveness, such as, again, you can't do, let's say, sex wrong. So you get through screwing, and, for a while, it was either, who was it, Shakespeare or Richard Nixon said it, the only time a man's sane. Or you eat, and you eat just enough that you're full. And you can get up and leave. I mean, you ate, and that's it. You'll live to eat another day, perhaps, because it is a satisfactory conclusion at the time. To do more is not satisfactory. It will give you a stomachache. To do less is not satisfactory. There is, in the world of acts, a clear line. You eat just enough to be full. With men, you engage in sex just enough to let some of your bodily fluids take a short trip. If you're sleepy, you lay down and you sleep to the point that your nervous system wakes up. You don't do it any more and you don't do it any less. There is a tacit, absolutely silent line that's very clear cut with acts. You don't malfunction with acts. What if the intellect, what if you thought, what if an ordinary man could think in the same way? That what it was he was thinking about, there's no way, nobody's ever thought about it in these kind of words, but you didn't think about whatever it was. Of course, all you can think about is something derived from acts. Remember, facts follow acts. So let us say we now have a man thinking about sex. And you've got over half the hospital beds with people with problems. I've never known a figure, but I would assume, knowing psychology, that they would say probably over half of those people, they're taking up over half the hospital beds because of illnesses of facts instead of acts, that over half of them would probably be because of what? SEX. So, what would be the cure for that? What if that were not possible? What if the world of facts operated in that same kind of clear-cut way? Then, whatever would be proper, and I'm not here to tell you what it would be, because none of this is possible, but if we're going to discuss that, all right, everybody's going to think about sex to some degree, then whatever it was you thought about, you would think about it just enough, factually. We're not talking about the act now, but you would think about it just enough to be satisfying, and not too much and not too little, whatever it was. Or if you thought about, let me take it a little bit away from acts, which of course everybody didn't think about sex all the time except him, that you're thinking about the way you're treated in life, your social position. You're thinking about what happened to you in the past. You're thinking about your vocation. Whatever it is you're thinking about, it's disturbing. That's part of thinking, that you always feel as though to some degree I'm malfunctioning. You know, not that you're going crazy, but you feel as though you're malfunctioning. My whole life is tied up in music. God, I enjoy it. Well, when you look at that, you look kind of tense. Well, I know. Well, the thing is, I don't do enough. I don't practice like I should. Whatever it is in life, this is, we're talking about. It's as though you have got a gift horse. And it says, don't look me in the mouth. And of course, everybody's got to look at the mouth, and you look at the mouth and you think, God, my teeth are terrible. My breath is awful. Of course, you're looking in the horse's mouth and you see you. That is, you see this. You don't see the acts, you see the world of facts. But notice, if the world of facts did operate on that basis, that whatever it was, that your world of facts individually, that it operated just in the same way that you engage in sex just enough that it's just right, you eat just enough, not too much, not too little, it's just right, you sleep just enough. What if that operated here? For one thing, if it did, you would no longer have the thinking process of man operating at its needed, obviously, but this kind of needed, agitated, irritated, near meltdown level. What if your thoughts could make you as happy as being laid, as a good meal, whatever you like, or as a good sleep when you are tired? When people used to engage more in the world of acts after a good day's work of honest labor. To just lay down by God and go to sleep with a clear conscience. Of course, what they meant is their mind was almost worn out, and the world of facts didn't keep them awake. But if that could be in some way suddenly transferred in large numbers to people, or as I said, look at it from your view of knowing what you know about your old ordinary thinking processes, it would stop the intellect. And do not take it literally, of course, what I said, but it would stop that kind of agitated, and it is a near meltdown level of the intellect, because the better it works, the more you have it. I mean, it's a known Hollywood, if they're going to portray somebody really thinking, what do they do? And whether they be a scientist or just somebody thinking over their personal problems. You know, what do you do if you're really thinking, God? It is a form of agitation, irritation, being run up at the edge. Not satisfaction. No. But I've let Kyroot and several other people hint or ask around, what if you could get that kind of pleasure out of your own brain? I don't want to say it's as much fun as sex, but the thing of there being the feeling of a kind of conclusiveness to acts. What if there were? What if there was a possibility of doing that factually? That is, do it in the higher parts of your nervous system, other parts of your nervous system. Well, I'll give you the wrap-up comment. How about this? It would only be a revolutionist woman, a revolutionist man that could move into a new, fresh neural area to think beyond polarized, beyond any pro or con, beyond the divisions of acts and facts, beyond the feeling, the inescapable operations of the being a creature privy to ordinary facts, and part of the facts continually hint to one, you could be malfunctioning. It would only be a revolutionist with a new area of thinking, a new place inside of his or her own nervous system of thinking that would allow you to be a creature, a being of facts without suffering or without being hindered thereby. That would be it. So in conclusion, you fine parishioners, I'd like to say, dig it and soar.